I photographed the monks at Losar, the Tibetan New Year, a number of years ago at Labrang Monastery in Gansu, China. And this is an example of a couple of things. I love the snow, and the snow has also helped make this picture what it is, in that the snow, being white, acts like a big reflector, and you know, they're huddled together in relatively dark red scarlet robes, but because the snow is on the ground and in the air and coating their coats, it's thrown light as like a big reflector into each of these faces, so that, what do you guess? Maybe there's about 50 people in here, and each one of them looks like they've been individually lit. The wonderful thing about a print is it freezes the moment, and so later, as a print, you can sit here and study this thing in each different area of it and each different side of the picture, and you see all these different expressions and little gestures here. This guy with the prayer beads and the, I don't know, it looks like he's holding something, maybe even something to eat. And then these little bits of color, red, so you see a lot more once it's in print form than you ever see in the finder of your camera. And that's the wonderful thing about photography and the wonderful thing about a print. Okay, so I'll talk about this photograph here, which is in Dunhuang, 1,000-foot sand dune. They call it the Singing Sand Dunes of Dunhuang in Gansu, China. I was here shooting a story on Marco Polo, and the reason why they call it the Singing Sand Dune is because Marco described the sound of the wind coming over the top of the dune as sounding like music. So it's an important picture for my story, and my job as a storyteller, as a photographer for the National Geographic, is to give you the feeling of what it must have been like for Marco Polo to travel here 700 years ago. And it's my guess that this was even a tourist attraction in his day. That's also the problem, because off here to the right, somewhere this way, there is hundreds of tourists and hundreds of these camels. So when I saw this, I was sitting there trying to figure out what kind of picture I could make. It was rather depressing and disappointing because there were so many tourists, and I was thinking, how can I make a picture out of this? And so I had an idea, and I hopped into our Land Cruiser and started driving around the mountain of sand. I got to a point where I was opposite the sun, and I waited till the sun was at an angle like this, coming right over the edge of the dune. The dune's like this, and the sun is here, and as you can see, it's bouncing off the tops of these ridges. And I underexposed this film. This was shot on film, and backlit those camels, so you cannot see that that's camel 48, 22, 61, and you don't know that those are tourists, and you think that that's Marco Polo crossing the desert. So these are two pictures of a wonderful little town on the near Taxkorgan, which is way western China in Xinjiang, right near the Afghan-China border. And significant again on the Marco Polo shoot because I had just come through Afghanistan, and of course we couldn't cross that border into China, so I had just flown to Beijing and come west and was witnessing what the China side of the Afghan border was looking like. And I met these people, They are Tajiks. Tajiks being Afghans, the same people as on the other side in Afghanistan. The only thing is that these people live in China because they were sort of caught on the wrong side of the border when it was closed in 1949. The wonderful thing about this town is that the girls wore red and the boys wore blue, and the women in the town all wore red and all the men wore blue. So this struck me right away, and I wanted to take some kind of picture to emphasize this point. And I was in a schoolyard early in the morning at sunrise. Typical situation. I'm looking for a subject to shoot at sunrise, and people are, the light is right, but the unfortunate thing is that very few people are around. So I followed this kid, and he turned right into the schoolyard, and here I am, and I see this scene, and I start shooting. So my question to you is, or to the viewer, is how come these kids are not doing what kids normally do, which is making peace signs and posing for the camera and doing that kind of making faces, which is typical behavior of kids, especially this age, when they see a photographer. And the reason is, if you look at the shadow, you notice the shadow is right behind the kid, right behind. And what that means is the sun is right there, low in the sky. So when they're looking towards me, they're not seeing me, they're seeing a bright sun and a silhouette, a shadow. So they don't know I'm a photographer taking their picture. And I'm shooting away, getting these very natural situation. They're unaware of me being there. I'm shooting part of the scene, yet invisible to them, and I get this very natural picture of the kids doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is preparing for their lessons in the afternoon, or school lessons early in the morning.